Thank the gentleman. Now turn to the Vice Chair of the committee, gentleman from Florida, Mr. DeSantis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioner. Mr. Koskinen, are you aware that you currently are under investigation by the Justice Department regarding your role in determining when to produce lowest learners' emails?
I'm not aware of an investigation. I did see the Deputy Attorney General's statement last week before this committee that he was interested in, would be interested in why we had not provided him information in April as opposed to June, but I have not received any notice of an investigation.
Well, he told us that it was something that the Justice Department would look into, and he said that it was information that they did wish they had at the time that you discovered it. Let me ask you this. The committee interviewed IRS Deputy Associate Chief Counsel Thomas Kane, and he testified that senior IRS officials, including Catherine Duval, who's the counselor to the Commissioner, realized that Lois Lerner's emails were missing, that there was a hard drive crash on February 4th, 2014, and that by mid-February, they realized that the emails would not be recoverable off that hard drive. Yet, you testified in front of this committee on March 26, 2014, and after being asked numerous times whether you would produce all of Lois Lerner's emails consistent with the subpoena, you said you would. So if the senior IRS officials knew in mid-February that the emails could not be recovered off the hard drive, why did you tell this committee that you'd produce them?
As I've testified before, when I testified at previous hearings, when I testified in March, I said we would provide all Lois Lerner emails. As I have also testified since then, I did not mean to imply that if they didn't exist, we would somehow magically provide them. We have provided you all Lois Lerner emails we have. With regard to when officials at the IRS knew the impact of the hard drive crash, as I've testified several times in the 11 hours of hearing since June 13th, what I was advised and knew in February was that when you took the emails that had already been provided to this committee and other investigators, and instead of looking at them by search terms, looked at them by date, it was clear that there were fewer emails in the period up through 2011 than subsequently. And there was also, I was told, there had been a problem with Ms. Lerner's computer. It was not described to me in any greater detail than that. I was advised near the end of February that we were now reviewing all of our production capacity to make sure nothing had been done in the production capacity that would have explained or would have caused the loss of any emails. That process went forward, but at the same time, I would remind everybody, we were focused primarily on the request from this committee and the Finance Committee and the Ways and Means Committee to complete the production of all documents we had related to the determination process. And we did that, and in mid-March provided to the tax writing committees a letter saying we had now produced all the documents we had regarding the determination process.
Okay, I appreciate that. When we even asked Mr. Cole, if someone responds to discovery requests and they say they will produce all of them, they can't just do that, represent that, and then know, well, gee, we're not going to be able to produce all of them. And then once they figure that out, they have to come immediately and tell the opposing party. In this case, it's a congressional investigation, so it's not the same. And yet you guys sat on the information for several months, and that caused this investigation from our end to be obstructed. Let me ask you this about these backup tapes. The IRS has told Congress that backup tapes from 2011 no longer exist, yet Mr. Kane testified in terms of the interview with this committee that backup tapes may in fact exist. So can you now under oath definitively state that the relevant backup tapes that this committee has sought do not in fact exist?
All right. Excuse me, as I understand from your press release, what Mr. Kane said was the information we provided in June was accurate to the best of everyone's knowledge at that time. What he said since then is that the Inspector General—
Well, what you said, too, with all due respect, you said on June 20th, 2014 to the Ways and Means Committee that we, meaning the IRS, confirmed that backup tapes from 2011 no longer existed because they have been recycled pursuant to the IRS's normal policy. So that was a definitive statement on your part. Now we're getting information from Mr. Kane. Well, the IRS isn't exactly sure that that is in fact true.
What Mr. Kane reported was information that the Inspector General has started to review tapes to see if there's additional information on them. Mr. Kane said, therefore, there may be backup tapes that were recycled but may be recoverable. We have no information. I have no information about what the Inspector General is doing with those tapes. And in fact, the Inspector General advised us that he was reviewing those tapes and asked us not to do any further investigation, not to have any further conversations. And I understand he asked this committee as well not to make the existence of their review of those tapes public. But at this point, I have no information as to whether there is anything usable on those tapes.
Can you confirm to the committee today, we've been told obviously about learners' hard drive failure, then Ways and Means has identified as many as 7 or 8 additional individuals who are relevant to the investigation whose hard drives also crashed during this period. Now, based on testimony from Mr. Kane, it could be as many as 18 or 19 different hard drives that have crashed that would be relevant. So can you definitively state to this committee the number of hard drives from relevant individuals that crashed during the period in question?
I can tell you what I know at this time, which is in the first 6 months of 2011, over 300 hard drive crashes occurred, and there were over 5,000 reports of hardware problems. The first 6 months of this year, for example, over 2,000 hard drives have crashed. Not every
I understand, but that's your whole agency. We're talking about people who happen to be relevant in a relatively small universe of people, and the number of hard drive crashes seem to be getting higher the more that we investigate.
Right. And in May, I asked our people, once we knew that there was an issue with Ms. Lerner's crash, I asked for what the industry standards were for hard drive crashes, was advised that 3 to 5% of hard drives crashed. I asked then for a review of the question you are asking of custodians, how many of those 83 had hard drive crashes. We reported on the Monday, on June 16th to the Ways and Means Committee in a staff interview that we knew there were probably at least 6 or 7. The next morning, promptly on the receipt of that information, the Ways and Means Committee issued what turned out to be an erroneous press release saying that all of those emails had been lost, including the emails of Nicole Flax. It turned out, in a little further investigation, that it appears no emails for Ms. Flax were lost because the hard drive that crashed was not her office computer.
But in terms of the number of hard drive...
I'm sorry, can I answer the question?
But my question was the number of hard drive crashes. I understand you've mentioned the Ways and Means press release and numerous statements that you've made before Congress, and I've read your other statements, but the numbers, where do we stand on the number of hard drive crashes?
Where we stand on the number is thereafter the IG was requested by Congress to do an investigation, and the IG asked us not to do any further interviews or investigations. So we have not pursued further what the additional implications are of, A, how many hard drives crashed of custodians, or what the implications are, because the Inspector General is investigating that very issue. So I cannot give you a definitive answer at this point as to either how many custodians had crashes, or if they did, how many of them lost emails, because I would emphasize not every crash leads to
Well, Mr. Kane put the upper limit at 20, so there seems to be a contradiction there. My time is up. Mr. Chairman, thank you for indulging me, and I yield back.